All right, and thank you so much, Ken, and wonderful to be here with everyone. Just a note that we are recording our opening addresses and they are being put up publicly, so feel free to have camera on or on. We'll just share our screen here for today's opening address. Over the next half hour, we really want to dive in a little bit deeper into today's focus area, which is around the data and evidence component of collaborative response.
So we're so happy to have you join us again today. And we hope that yesterday was a day filled with learning and lots of different new ideas that you are able to use in your buildings and in your districts.
So with that, we had shared with those that were in just a little bit early that we are enjoying the splendors of Fort Macleod, Alberta. And as a result, it holds really special meaning for us. Treaty 7 is not only our birthplace for both of us here, but we spend a significant portion of our educational careers and personal lives on Treaty 7 territory. So really want to have an opportunity to pay gratitude to the land that has been significant in our lives throughout our careers and personal life. So with that,
we'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 7 territory, the territorial meeting grounds, gathering place and traveling route for the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Piikani, the Siksika,
sorry, it's small on our computer,
and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. We acknowledge all the many Indigenous footsteps that have marked these lands for centuries and the songs and stories that tell of its history. We're aware and we honor that some participants are joining us from other treaty areas and Métis zones in Alberta.
All right, and we're very honored here this morning to be able to join you. We are Kurtis and Lorna Houston, lead learners and co-founders of Jigsaw Learning, and we'd love for you in the chat window just to share who you are, your role, and which school, district, or organization you're joining us from here today. And with that, we do want to have an opportunity to thank our keynote sponsor for today, our good friend Ahmed Jawad, who is CEO of INTELLIMEDIA. And at this point, we'd love to turn it over to Ahmed to share just a little bit about INTELLIMEDIA and their connection to collaborative response and Jigsaw Learning. I'll turn it over to you, Ahmed. It's great to have you here this morning.
Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen and then please tell me if you could see my screen. So,
looks perfect, Ahmed.
Perfect. So thank you for the opportunity to address, but really for me, I'm part of the education community and that consists of many school districts, but that relationship is usually with people and trying to understand what our focus is. Our focus is really student success and for us, empowering student success is key. During my journey, I had the opportunity to work with Lorna and Kurtis. We partnered regarding collaborative response, and it was not a business relationship. It was an education relationship because they care so much, and I care so much. They have kids. I have my son. He just graduated from high school last year, went to university. So for us, education is key. And the relationship with the districts are key. So I'd like to tell you a little bit our story, what we've been doing, and really what's across Alberta specifically. We have clients across Canada internationally, but within Alberta, we have about 47 clients that using Dossier, which is the CR module or collaborative response is part of it. Also, we have School Engage, our form management system. We have school districts or schools from 500 to over 100,000. So every school is important and all of them have the similar need. And one of the key need is really it's data and evidence. At the end of the day, if we want to support students, we need to know what's happening to them, what's happening to their, basically within their family sometimes, and how can we support them. You see a little bit in here some of the good news that we have just last week, and for some the participants from Edmonton Public, for example. I'm sorry just to target them because last week we just signed basically contract with Edmonton Public, and it's important regarding this discussion. It's called Education Dashboard Platform, and really try to know your students and try to be able to do something with the data that's available. We're doing this across Alberta, and the CR module is important in terms of the actions that we have there. Now, I'm just put a little bit kind of a diagram of some of the within our software, what we do. On the left-hand side is really know your student, is data and evidence about knowing from their attendance, all the way their assessments, all the way basically maybe behavioral data and so on. And in here, and I'm just going to focus on basically the CR piece, where this is where the action happened. We know, and we have to act. And with collaborative response and other modules we have, even the IPP or referral, but specifically with collaborative response, we need to sit down, meet about those students, have certain strategies, and follow up and so on. And really, at the end of the day, it's data-informed practice, where we need to know so we could support our student better for the future. And this is where the crux of the relationship with Jigsaw, but more importantly, the relationship is based on passion to education and support. And I feel I'm glad that I know Lorna and Kurtis, because their passion is important in the way that we're working with school districts. So really, at the end of the day, is although we have certain data that we that specifically support the student, but there's so many type of data in school, HR data and other data that's available, could be finance, could be engagement data, that within school that is important to figure out how we're going to support our students. And right now with the government, Alberta Ed have the assurance framework dashboard, or the assurance framework in general, that we're assisting school district to create that dashboard from all those data to, at the end of the day, have certain specific action to support student success. I'd like to thank Lorna and Kurtis and Jigsaw and everybody at Jigsaw. Jennifer, I think, is there, and Amber. So thank you very much for the relationship. And that relationship is really, at the end of the day, about student success and helping our community of educators. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ahmed. As you said, we've known each other and had a wonderful working relationship and friendship for a long time now. So we're just thrilled to have you come and join us. And we love the fact that you've spoken to data and evidence, because of course, our keynote this morning is focused on data and evidence. So thank you so much, Ahmed.
Hey, how can I help?
And we really appreciate
I am here today. I'm just
your sponsorship as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. So yesterday we had an opportunity to be able to share a bit of a challenging statement with you. And most importantly, it's a passion for us, and it's so close to our heart. And we truly believe that every child deserves a team. And we would continue to think about that phrase as we talk about data and evidence today. It continues to have influence and impact on the conversation that we're going to have with you this morning.
So this morning, we want to unpack the why behind the data and evidence, similar to what we engaged with yesterday around collaborative structures and processes. We know that this is going to be confirming for many people within our audience this morning, but really talking about, so why is data and evidence a foundational component, and how can we engage in some mind shifts within our school that really have substantial impact when it comes to supporting the success of students and also building collective capacity of our teams through each and every conversation.
So here's another little mind twister sentence for you to get you going first thing in the morning here. Just thinking on that data and evidence piece. So provide support for your most at-risk students by not focusing on them in the collaborative team meeting. And throughout our time this morning, we're going to really explore that idea of how do we ensure that our intention in each of our teams, the layers that we spoke about yesterday, are really focused on the right students. as we move forward through those processes.
So we'd like for you to meet Jolene. Everybody knows Jolene. Everyone across our school knows Jolene. Jolene is not an unknown within our school. We have lots of data that demonstrate what's happening for her, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, observational. We have ed psychs. We have a lot of information that informs what's happening for Jolene. When we ask the question, so who should we talk about? Jolene comes up an awful lot. It's almost next to impossible to narrow down to key issues. There's just so much going on for this wonderful human being. And we often are feeling frustrated in our conversations because the ideas we're suggesting, the things that we're trying, we're not seeing it move the needle a ton. We see momentary bursts of success and glimmers of hope, and then things fall backwards. Jolene's a tough student that we love to pieces, but is really consuming a lot of our energy and our time.
And I'd like to introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is quiet and reserved. And when we bring up Marcus's name at school, many teachers say, oh, who is that again? And teachers aren't very descriptive when we do ask about him, not really sure about where exactly he fits. And knowing though that he could be doing better, but not really sure exactly what to do to surface his needs, knowing that he doesn't fit in the same space that Jolene fits in.
Now, the irony of this is that where we're not seeing the significant improvements, the ahas that are coming for Jolene, there is an irony that we would likely see improvements fairly quickly and substantially for Marcus as a learner if we just looked at some small instructional adjustments made for him within the classroom.
But the unfortunate thing is that without intentional support, Marcus has the potential of being at risk because that gap is going to grow for him.
This is a great example that without an intentional focus on Marcus, this might be a student that actually doesn't have a team. It has an individual teacher doing the best and doing really great things for this child's success. But how do we bring this team approach that we obviously have in place for Jolene?
So let's think about those layers that we shared yesterday. And currently, Jolene would be discussed at every single one of those layers.
We mention who do we want to talk about. Her name comes up each and every time, even when teams come together for just some planning around some common assessments and unit design. Jolene's name still comes up in that conversation. We have a hyper focus that is on Jolene, but then how do we have time to address the needs of other students? And the question remains, how do we utilize these structures to attend to the needs of Jolene, which are obvious, but also Marcus? What is the best fit for both students?
We would argue that Marcus is also in need of a collaborative team, and his best fit is within that collaborative team meeting that we talked about yesterday. We still have lots of opportunities to talk about Jolene's intensive needs within the school support team, in that case consult team meeting.
So how do we ensure Marcus's our many Marcuses? I'm sure you have a Marcus in mind right now. How do we ensure that these are the ones that are coming up in those collaborative team meetings when Jolene is at the front of our minds each and every day? The answer is the purposeful infusion of data and evidence.
So most often when we begin to talk about data and evidence, one of the first questions that comes, that surfaces with the teams that we're working with is, what screeners should we be using? Because that's the most pertinent thing in their mind.
Lots of times it's not a lack of data that's happening in a school. It's what is the data that we should be collecting, looking at for us.
And really that looking for that affirmation that the things that we're using, those screeners that we're using, are actually effective and viable.
So it's actually the wrong first question to be asking. The first question we should be asking is, what are the priorities we're trying to focus on? When we think about our school improvement plan, our school development plan, our 3-year plan, whatever the language is that you use within your own context, we should be asking, what are you trying to impact overall? If you've said during COVID, we've really seen that we need to focus in on student wellness, one of our first questions should be, well, what kind of screener are you utilizing to determine who are the students we should be focusing on in regards to wellness? When we work with a school that says executive functioning is really something we're trying to make an impact on. Okay, well, how are you screening which students we should be paying attention to? It can't be just teacher gut and observation, because it will naturally bring us back to Jolene without some data that's purposefully organized.
And it's what we do with the data that's important. And it really requires a call to action from what our data is telling us. Data necessitates action.
And I think that's a really important piece that we have to continue to stress. So how you organize that data that we collect matters. And many of you in the room will be nodding when we talk about the critical importance of color coding. It's a critical step to ensure that not only is the data user-friendly, but it allows us to focus on students who are close, but still require our attention. Jolene is likely a student, that the data is putting in the red. And we'll use that with a little bit of air quotes as we talk through, while Marcus may be somebody that's yellow. Not quite there, but sure getting close. It wouldn't take much for us to be able to get him to where we want to be. We'd love for you as part of this conversation. We, for simplicity's sake, are talking about red, yellow, green, but we do have a fantastic pre-recorded session that's part of the symposium from a leader in the Calgary Board of Education who talks about the decolonization of colors and the importance of moving from a westernized color palette. Interesting stuff, and we thank that leader for her contributions.
So we would really encourage you to, within your collaborative team meetings, to focus on those yellow students. The students that really are in the middle, we used to call them bubble students. Yeah. The students who are really in the middle, that if we identify specific needs that they have through our data and evidence, then we can attend to small strategies and supports that could be put in place that could make a significant difference to Marcus.
So this is where the connections between the 3 foundational components are highly intentional and purposeful. Now, the good news is with those layering, Jolene's needs are being met. We have a school support team where she's surfacing frequently. We have opportunities where we're coming together as a case consult just to focus on Jolene and nobody else. However, now
we also have the needs of Marcus met and identified as well. So we're able to provide supports for Marcus and understand him more deeply than we might have before.
Now let's connect back to yesterday when we talked about the importance of providing support for the student by not focusing on the student. Even better yet, as Marcus has identified through the data, now we can narrow in on a key issue to address and identify other students with the same key issue.
And through that process, of course, creating a plethora of ideas that will support not just Marcus, but a number of other students. So engaging in that conversation around what if and documenting those wonderful ideas that could support a number of children at one time.
Now, the mind shift that happens within this is because we've put the focus onto Marcus, who's close, there's just some things that we could try, but the things that we try, guess who they're also going to have tremendous benefit over time as we're building capacity through this process? Jolene. If we had put the focus on Jolene, it could take us down a rabbit hole. We can't focus in on one thing. There's a number of things going on, but the conversations, the strategies, accommodations, interventions that are coming are ones that can support all of our students, including those, in fact, I would say even more so, those most at risk.
So when we think about this particular situation with Jolene and Marcus, we could think back a couple of slides ago, that if we're talking about Jolene in every single one of our layers of team, then we never get the opportunity to talk about Marcus or to talk about other students that have similar needs to Marcus. And then it becomes the full responsibility of just that classroom teacher to be able to support Marcus. This way, we have that chance to share practice, share ideas, and to surface what's happening for many, many other children.
So many of the things that are going to come forth are often universal in nature. The idea of intended for one, but beneficial for all.
And of course, this takes us to that universal design for learning. This really is an opportunity for us to live universal design for learning.
But in a way that's very, very intentional and student focused, by using then the data to surface those students who are close. We could see success through the collaborative team meeting conversation. These are students who are more likely to see either immediate or higher degrees of impact happening through just the implementation of alternate ideas and strategies within the classroom.
It also provides us with an opportunity to build that teacher trust that we talked about yesterday through that process, and a willingness to dig into those diverse ideas that are surfaced by all the teachers in that team.
We think about if we had just focused on Jolene, the things that Kathy said we could try, Julie said we could try, Ronica, they just don't seem to work. It feels like we're spinning. But when we focused in on Marcus, looked at a key issue, attached others, and I tried the thing that Scott suggested, it worked. It really builds that trust. And it's interesting, our good friend Jim Parsons and Larry Beauchamp actually did a study on collaboration in Alberta a number of years ago and found that far and away, the most valued professional learning that teachers spoke of was the learning that occurred when in collaboration with colleagues. What this does is puts an intentional focus on that collaboration that is all about clearly articulating what is it that we can do and what is it that we know has impact. This becomes that clear articulation so critically important when we come to our continuum of supports, which will be our focus tomorrow.
So infusing that data and evidence takes this collaboration to a completely different level, shifting the conversation to focus on students who may have never surfaced at another point in time.
We often hear this from teachers engaging in collaborative team meetings, particularly, of saying it's refreshing that we're looking at those students that we haven't really paid attention before. We know that in each and every person's heart, they want success for every child. But how can we do that when we're focusing on just the few that need that intensive level support? We're not suggesting ignore them, not at all. We're suggesting by focusing on a different subset, we generate a conversation about pedagogy and practice that has an impact on each and every student. We mentioned Simon Breakspear yesterday. He talked about the idea that small incremental changes may not look like much in the short term, but when we look long term, it has incredible impact across organizations. And that's what we're talking about here today. How can we use the data and evidence to shift conversations that is going to build each and every teacher toolbox just a little bit with each and every conversation, growing the capacity of our school, our teams, and our systems through that process.
So let's think back to our core statement that every child deserves a team. And when we think now about Marcus and we think about Jolene, of course, we've got a team for Jolene, but now we also have identified Marcus through our data and evidence. And now Marcus also has a team.
This doesn't mean Marcus has a personalized plan. It doesn't mean that he has a clearly indicated team that's been written down somewhere, but it's a team approach that supports each and every person to support each and every child. So today we are focusing in on data and evidence. In the Symposium site, you will see panel discussion and discussion forums that'll happen once again today at noon and at the end of the day at 4 o'clock. Please note that the panel discussions are recorded, but we're really excited to dig in to some of these ideas. And there are a number of pre-recorded sessions as well that focus in on the data and evidence. So with that, thank you so much for starting your day off with us. We know that we have busy people within the conversation and so incredibly privileged to have you here today. Thank you to INTELLIMEDIA as a keynote sponsor. Thank you to Ken for being able to moderate and help us with any tech that may come up. And we wish you all the best as you engage in your day.
Remember that we shared an organizer with you yesterday that that identifies a number of pre-recorded sessions that will fit also your learning in that data and evidence piece. So thank you so much and enjoy your day today.
Take care, everyone. All the best.